Hey Chris, we're so lucky to have you here today. My name is Juliet and I'm a senior at Carnegie Mellon University where I study math and statistics, and I'm also a student employee of the Career Center, which is why I'm interviewing you today. So before we begin, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, sure, of course. Well, thank you for hosting me today. Of course, right off the bat, I'm thrilled to hear that you are affiliated in such a way with the university. I'm an alumni from a few years before you, but I liked it so nice I did it twice, as they say. I was both an undergraduate and graduate of the College of Engineering, or Carnegie Institute of Technology, CIT, in the electrical and computer engineering program. So that's how I got my start in Pittsburgh, of which I still reside after some journeys around the planet. And really proud CMU alumni to see where the university has taken me and where it's taken itself all these years, thanks to incredibly talented students like yourself and your fellow classmates. I'm originally also from this Rust Belt area, not from Pittsburgh, but from Buffalo, New York, and then work for Bosch, which I guess we'll talk a little bit more of the rest of our conversation today. And currently responsible for Bosch's Research and Technology Center. That's down in the Strip District neighborhood of Pittsburgh. And again, really proud to work. I mean, Carnegie Mellon was my introduction into Bosch, which I spent most of my career. And I'm also really just proud to work for Bosch. It's very deep relationship with CMU that's built on almost 3 decades of a relationship working together. Lots of CMU alumni and growing in our company, in our office, and always looking to grab a few more to be my colleagues.
That's super cool to hear. I'm still in California right now, but I definitely miss the Strip District. So it's kind of cool that you work there. So how did you come to work at Bosch?
So it actually started with my undergraduate research project in senior year. I don't know if they do that sort of thing anymore, but the custom at the time was that if you to pursue college honors within the College of Engineering, you had to do a research project. And so myself and a couple of my classmates got together, and well, they were much better at this than I, but approached a couple of different professors at the time. I was quite a shy guy at the point. So I teamed up with them, and one professor who's still a professor there and really successful, Professor Phil Koopman, gave us a shot to run a undergraduate research project. And the sponsor of that research project was Bosch, who had just recently launched their lab here. This was in 1999. So as part of that, got a chance to get introduced to the company. It was at the time, it was seen sort of a useless thing. Our project at that time was to connect a car wirelessly to the internet. And in 1999, you think, why would you want to connect a car to the internet? And this was right when the wireless sensor Andrew project was through, so you literally couldn't go past Shenley Park or else you would disconnect from the internet. Led to an internship, and then that led to a job. And so it was really all CMU, right place, right time. Bosch launching in Pittsburgh, me being a graduating undergrad, of course, then pursued my graduate degree later on. But I wouldn't have this job, wouldn't be in this place if it wasn't for CMU and its connections, not just to academia, but also to industry.
That's super cool. Wow. Yeah. So what has your experience been like since your internship and now like working here full time?
So after I did my internship with Bosch, I actually ended up doing another internship in different companies I worked for. I worked also in Silicon Valley for a little while, worked down in Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. And so I had an opportunity to kind of take some different experiences with different companies. And I really enjoyed the opportunity that Bosch gave me at the time. Not to say it wasn't aggressive or whatever, but it was a little bit more stable in terms of sort of for somebody coming in their career, where it kind of gave you a little bit more confidence that there was going to be that next step and the next step after that. And that's kind of what happened for me personally. Not that the other companies I worked for and they really thrived. Bosch was my connection to, for example, I was one of the first employees over at NVIDIA. Down at IBM as well. So really, I mean, all the incredible opportunities that all the students, or certainly I expect almost all the students have from CMU, it's introductions to world-class organizations, whether you go into industry or later other parts of academia. For me personally, I'm super satisfied with my choice because I started off in Pittsburgh with the lab here, and then I had an opportunity to do a foreign assignment abroad at Bosch's headquarters in Southwest Germany, in Stuttgart. came back, took on another role, and then had an opportunity again go back again even longer for a second time, almost 5 years over there in Germany. So regrettably, my German since then has sort of evaporated. I'm not sure if it was ever very good. But it's not every day you get the opportunity to go spend, a really important part of a career, and also, of course, just out of personal interest, in Europe for that chunk of time in a really, professional global organization. And then since then, I never would have this opportunity. And Bosch here in Pittsburgh would not be where we are. I wouldn't be where I am. We wouldn't be where we are without the connection to Carnegie Mellon. So we have a lot of great flagship collaborations with CMU, both in the College of Engineering, the School of Computer Science, our flagship Bosch Center for AI, collaboration with Professor Zico Coulter, which I think is really been demonstrated to be a really great way of working together with the universities. So I feel very lucky to live in the city of my alma mater. And the final thing I'll say is that whenever we call, CMU answers and how. I mean, the opportunity to, again, I guess we'll talk about later on, recruit students and interns, to have access to world-class leadership, to pick the brains of the leadership of the university. I almost blush a little bit when I'm able to use, the first name basis of, the president. I think Farnham has done an awesome job. Provost Jim Garrett is also, I think, a great leader. The deans are fantastic, department heads on down. And so just having the ability to be there, to be here, and to have those, have mentors and leaders like that, have access to that and to help me guide me in my own professional journey has been something I never in a million years would have expected, and I'm very, very lucky to have from CMU.
Thank you for sharing that response. I feel like it's really great that you had the chance to relocate basically like wherever you wanted in the world, and also have such close ties with the CMU community. So I guess we'll transition now into company culture. So you've worked at Bosch for many years, and how would you describe Bosch's culture?
So I don't know how many people necessarily, hopefully more and more people know about Bosch as we become a little bit more visible in the consumer space. So I think many years ago when I first started, most people knew Bosch for car parts. Basically, we are the world's largest automotive supplier. There is basically not a car driving out there on the road in the United States that doesn't have some kind of Bosch thing in it. But we also make a lot of different stuff from industrial equipment, building technology, appliances, et cetera, et cetera. And there's also 400,000 of us that work for Bosch globally, which is just, for me, a mind-boggling number. What I think the other part of what makes Bosch is we actually make a lot of our own stuff, right? So I mean, it's not that I'm talking to you from my own from an Apple device and everything, but Apple doesn't really make those things, right? They work with partners. We have manufacturing plants all over the planet, which I think is really at the kind of the heart of us of being an industrial company. We don't just design, but we also build and manufacture things, which also is a responsibility that we have to our associates that work in those roles, right? So it's not just scientists and engineers or other professionals; it's our manufacturing associates that help to really make the products that allow us to be, a ongoing concern. I think the other important thing about culture that I'd like to tie into is, there's not a whole lot of companies like Bosch in terms of our governance structure. So if you sort of follow it all the way up, we're kind of, I'm oversimplifying it here, but we're kind of owned by a charity, right? We're not a public company. We're privately held, and the money that we make goes into, I'm kind of roughly translating from German here, but it goes to like a foundation, right? The Bosch Foundation. And that money that we make that goes to the foundation supports causes in environmental stewardship, early stage education, healthcare. So on one hand, that's great. I mean, who wouldn't want the fruits of their labor to go to support such great causes? On the other hand, it's also maybe a little bit challenging because I've worked for Bosch for almost 20 years and I do not own a single piece of Bosch stock because there is none to own, right? And this is also for people, different people have different goals in their careers and expectations on compensation type of thing. And so that really affects a lot of that culture. There's a lot of, when you talk about the quality in professional working environment, you have everyone from literally the person on the factory line making or inspecting something up to the scientist or engineer, the executive driving that product. And there is very much a sense of eye-to-eye relationship in that everybody has something to contribute there. And I've seen that legitimately so over the course of my multi-decade time here. And again, and also the fact that the company is, almost, I mean, we're getting up to 140 years old. We all feel like, listen, we want to be part of that, making that next 140 years. Since, the fruits of our labor go to these good causes, we want to be driving that next generation of success to make sure that we've got another century of good results ahead of us as well. So those are really parts of the things that are ingrained in the company, as well as a number of these Bosch values, which I think maybe we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about sort of recruitment, our commitment to sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are also really part and parcel for what makes us go on a daily basis.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like it's really great to hear as a CMU student. Like, I definitely want to contribute and make sure my ideas are heard when I'm looking for a full-time job. So I'm sure other CMU students feel the same way. Also, I really like the idea of having a foundation and like supporting a great cause and making sure that all of the fruits of your labor go towards supporting those causes.
Absolutely.
Really great. Okay. So apart from what you mentioned, what are some of the company's core values?
So this is something we talk about. I would say, frankly, almost daily. And actually, you can go out and Google things like the Bosch values, and it's publicly accessible. So if you'd like to come back to this a little bit later on, but one of the key things that I am super proud of is our commitment to sustainability and environmental stewardship. So specifically, there's been a lot of talk now, especially within the last year. If you recall, or if all of us recall, before the pandemic sort of grabbed our attention, there was really an inflection point, I think, for all of us in terms of like plastic waste going into the ocean, this tipping point in greenhouse gases, all of this kind of stuff. But before all of that happened, going back to 2018, 2019, Bosch had made the commitment to being CO2 neutral by 2020. And we were able to meet that goal. And if you look at it, and we're not like a primarily digital company, right? We're a physical company that makes a lot of stuff and things. So our energy footprint is pretty vast. So that's a pretty not trivial lift in order to meet that commitment, which we also I almost sort of, I think a lot of people would have given us a pass if during the pandemic if we would have backed off of that commitment, but we were able to do that. And I think you start to see now a lot of also companies that are more in the digital realm also start to make this commitment because of the growing concern around this. So I'd like to think that through not just our own operation, but also the products and services that we sell, the commitment to the future of mobility. If you use any Bosch appliance out there, it might not be the cheapest, but it certainly is one of the most energy efficient, as well as meeting a lot of the advanced standards for recyclability and all these kind of things. So that's something that's always been part and parcel of our mission, and we're really putting our money where our mouth is. I think also something that really I think all of us want to do much better. And we have to do better, is the events of the last year also showed us we have a long way to go, especially in this country around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you can see, and this was not a knee-jerk reaction to this many years back, things around, one of the core values is diversity is our strength. And this is something clearly as evidenced. I'm certainly lucky to work in my organization. We took a sort of informal poll maybe 5 years ago, and we have people in about 100-person research lab. We're looking at something like, 70 different languages spoken from people from 40 different countries or something like this, right? And this is something where, well, it's super handy if you want something translated, but also like just the diversity of the diversity of people brings the diversity of ideas, which I think now is basically understood, accepted that this is such a key part of innovation. So of course it drives a bottom line, a positive bottom line, but that's also something where I think that we put try our best, certainly to put our money where our mouth is, in hiring, promoting, developing, leaning on that diversity as our strength value. That being said, there's still a lot we would like to do going forward, and I would like to work together with other organizations and stakeholders right here in Pittsburgh. For example, the Allegheny Conference on Community Development is a partner of ours. Of course, Carnegie Mellon is a partner of ours to really push and to lead from the front from right here in Pittsburgh. And we are hoping to do better there.
Thank you so much for sharing about these. I think sustainability and diversity are two parts of company culture that a lot of CMU students look for, myself included. Yeah. Okay. So what makes Bosch stand out from similar companies?
Oh, maybe to piggyback off of the previous discussion points too is, around you say core values. Now again, I don't want to put us in the same realm at the moment as some of the digital IT giants here. But if you also see, I think we were at least maybe not super ahead of the game, but certainly I think timely in our efforts to be very transparent about the way that we handle, treat, store, use data, especially of a personal nature. So I think it was last year, maybe it was even the year before, that we released our AI Code of Ethics, or the AI Codex is what we abbreviated, which is a commitment from the company to behave in such a way that we also hope is not just financially responsible, but also morally and of course legally responsible to both to our stakeholders. So a lot of times you think of this discussion about sort of a triple bottom line of not just the customers or the shareholders, but also of the people and the planet. And I think that that's something that is absolutely ingrained in the way that we do business. You see that with again the sustainability commitment, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now also this is something I think will be really increasingly top of mind for us all. I think there's probably no people smarter on the planet knowing where this is going, literally, than you and your students and faculty and staff at Carnegie Mellon. And I think that ultimately organizations that put a premium on handling this correctly, and also with a moral tint to it, an ethical tint to it, and certainly a legal tint to it, I think that there will be that they will have an advantage and have a much more sustainable approach to this going forward.
Thank you so much. So kind of going off, I think maybe 3 responses back, you've discussed how Bosch was carbon or CO2 neutral by 2020. Does your company have any other changes planned in the next coming years?
Well, yes, and actually CMU is believe it or not, is really a big part of it. So the reality is we would like to transition our portfolio from being so dominant. And again, the reality is if you look at where most of our revenue, most of the profit comes from, is from physical products. And we know that the future is much more as at least a balance. I mean, I can't imagine a scenario in which we're going to stop making stuff. Again, I think that is just such an important ethos of the company. But I think that we will, whether our customers being people like like OEMs, car manufacturers that take our systems and integrate it within their own, or end customers such as you or I that buy a power tool or an appliance. All of our customers' expectations around the more digital nature of our products is changing. You need things that are much more self-diagnosing. Has something failed? When is it going to fail? How do I prevent it from failing, for example? Customizing to what you expect it to how it should behave, not having to come up with 50 million different kinds of settings for something that should be automatically recognized. All these kind of things that are based on first the revolution in connectivity, but now again this is the Carnegie Mellon connection as well in artificial intelligence, and that's why again I'm really, and not just I think, we know this was mentioned at Bosch's keynote at CES last year. The president of Bosch North America talked about how Bosch's collaboration with CMU and the Bosch Center for AI, Professor Zico Coulter is the one in the School of Computer Science who leads that. That is one of Bosch's key success factors in our efforts to develop AI and also to apply to our products and services. So this is going to be, we're still, like a lot of companies, I think, pretty early in really bringing that sort of the buzzword down into reality. But this is something where I'm super proud that, again, my alma mater and soon to be yours, on such has the ability to kind of steer and shape the direction of a global enterprise in one of its most important ways.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. I'm really excited to see what the company will do in the next coming years. So you've mentioned AI and you've mentioned sustainability and diversity, but apart from those, are there any other upcoming trends that you think will have a large impact on Bosch?
I think there's a lot of the future of mobility. I think is super. Of course, I think I mean, to say it's interesting is the understatement of the century, but it's also much more dynamic than I think a lot of us working in the industry expected.
Mhm.
Um, and by that, I mean, I think we all thought, well, where are our self-driving cars? And then it's going to be in a couple of years. Well, maybe it's not, maybe that you and I wouldn't buy our own self-driving car. Maybe we'll use something like a robotaxi service, for example. All these different scenarios continue to evolve. What will be the propulsion of the future? What is a responsible way to integrate alternative forms of propulsion? So as we move in the evolution of the internal combustion engine, do we just rush all into electric cars? However, is that something that the electric grid can especially in a country like the United States with some of the infrastructure that we have? Do we have the right mix of energy supply feeding into that? So, for example, you're running an electric car off of coal, right? That's not really helping anything. Are there other things? So, for example, like fuel cell technologies, stationary or mobile, that we can then integrate into the mix to also help to lower down the overall environmental impact of such things. So, I think being the world's largest automotive supplier, so we better get our portfolio right fast. But the reality is, if you the assumptions or you go out and sort of read the pundits of people are guess, oh, this is going to win by next year, or that's going to be, the future is wide open, and I am hoping, and we are hoping that we're making a couple of strategic bets in some of these different areas, such as autonomy, such as fuel cells. Such as increased robust and safe artificial intelligence. Again, it's something developed right here in Pittsburgh with our Bosch Center for AI with CMU. All of these kind of things is we see all of that. I think we need to be a little bit light on our feet. And it's not just Bosch, but the industry. We are learning that we need to be more light on our feet rather than just placing one big bet on X. We need to be a little bit, much more agile, I think, than we have been. In order to better adapt to the shifting sands because it's such a complex environment going forward.
Really insightful. Thanks so much for sharing. This kind of definitely went like a little bit over my head because I'm a math major, don't study engineering. So, but I definitely see how a lot of CMU students can apply their knowledge to try to fix these questions in the future. So we're going to jump into everyone's favorite subject, recruitment. So you've been at Bosch for many years, but what do you think you guys look for in students during recruitment?
Well, so we're very lucky in that we have a very robust internship program. And I mean, on the order of just in Pittsburgh alone, we're talking 30 or 40 interns. And we hire almost exclusively either early graduate students or advanced undergraduates. Frankly, I think CMU now is such I mean, not just within Bosch, of course, but it, just like many places, has such a positive reputation, right? I mean, I think that pedigree, and also I think our knowledge of each other, and what I mean by that is, it's not just, oh, hey, there's an engineering student, but there's an engineer, and I'll just pick my own degree just as an example, within ECE who's done a concentration within distributed systems, right? We know that, and we know that we have a feeling that student would be a good fit for this activity over the summer, over a 3 or 6 month internship. And so what I think that allows us to do is, in general, is to continue to deepen our ties, with CMU, but just to set both parties up for success, right? Especially with CMU students, they're not going someplace just to collect a paycheck. They're going because they have opportunities literally all over the planet, and they'd like to make sure that they get the most out of that investment of time. And so in our case, we're able to do targeted recruitment. And again, and of course, we also are lucky enough to hire students. We also have international students through our connections over in Europe. from other great universities, MIT, University of Michigan, Stanford, that are coming, increasingly coming to Pittsburgh and everything. But I think what we're really looking for a lot of times, and I lead with the internship program because it allows us to introduce ourselves to each other. And then especially for that, that first, I think I got really lucky, but I think certainly I didn't remember and I didn't know how important that first choice, that first organization that you choose to invest your time in, that your career in, how important that is. And so if we are able to host a student for an internship, we get to know each other, and then then the interview process later on is a mere formality. We have interviewed the student over 3 or 6 months, and they have interviewed us, because very likely they've probably done internships at other top tier organizations and say, hey, you know what, this is a place I want to work. This would fit what I would like to do. So that is, I think, a huge advantage that we have, being right down the street from the campus, and all, again, over this extended time, just getting to know each other over all these years.
Yeah, definitely. Here at the CPDC, we definitely say that the internship's a time for you to reflect and see if that's a company that you want to work for in the future. So that's something that I think a lot of CMU students do when they're interning.
Yep, absolutely.
So what kind of roles do you guys have for CMU students?
So the main organization that I'm responsible for is primarily a research and development organization. So in my teams, we're primarily looking for graduate students, masters, and mostly PhDs in areas of various facets of engineering, computer science, for example. So a typical career path would be to start off as a research scientist or engineer. And you're looking at, if you look at sort of a maturity type of view, it's something that's a little bit more applied, oftentimes, than what you would see coming out of a university lab, within the domain of either current or potentially future products at CMU, which is a really cool, but I think also very challenging type of a role. What we're looking now to, again, expanding the breadth, not just the depth, but the breadth of our recruitment at CMU is, our lab here in Pittsburgh, is about a couple hundred people, but we have various engineering and technical centers all over the United States, a large one in the traditional automotive heartland over in Detroit and Michigan, and then also a little bit more IT focused over in Chicago. And it's almost like we've been sort of hoarding the CMU students in Pittsburgh too much. And so what we're looking for, and they typically hire, the other parts of Bosch typically hire more undergraduate type of roles. So everything from, say, product management, a little bit more, let's say, not like less far out researchy engineering, more like, hands-on engineering for some of our autonomous vehicle, development, or for some of our digital service work that we do. And so this is now what I'm hoping. And when we had a smaller scale Bosch, like a Bosch Info Night. This was, of course, pre-pandemic. I think this was back in 1999. And we had to sort of build on that going forward. Of course, that was not possible last year. But this is also now where other parts of Bosch see the value of that CMU students bring, and are much more open. Now, again, this is what I mentioned is mostly kind of technical, which I guess you would kind of expect. I mean, we're a big, giant engineering firm, but engineering-driven firm. But also, for example, over the last summer, together with our friends of the Tepper School, we sponsored for many years, actually, a program over there called the Corporate Startup Lab. And the challenge for those teams are to bring multidisciplinary type of skill sets to problem solving, and to flesh out, what might be say an early idea for a product, and is that a viable, could that be viable in the market? And so we've worked together with people from the Entertainment Technology Center, students from ETC, which was, that's actually one of my favorite stories of all time. Some really great students from School of Design, obviously from Tepper, from all these different skill sets. And I think that they do a really great job of opening up our eyes as to the value of these diverse skill sets, and how we might be not utilizing them enough in sort of an traditional engineering-led culture, and how that might provide some more opportunities going forward. And so just the final thought on that is, so we sponsored the class last year, or was I'm sorry, we sponsored one project last year, and it was so successful that we decided, and we've been doing it for a couple of years, but other parts of Bosch kind of latched onto it, and now we're, for the first time, we're going to sponsor two upcoming. I believe we're the only company that they allowed us to do that. So thank you, Tepper, for allowing us to do that, and that will double the chances that we have. And those students that have worked on the program then were all offered internships, and at least one of them, who I believe was an MBA, a Tepper student, took a full-time offer from Bosch, either in Chicago or Michigan. I do not know. So we're slowly expanding the CMU Army within Bosch.
That's really great to hear how you guys go from like working with them as clients for projects to giving them an internship position to giving them a full-time offer. So for the people who don't have the opportunity to work on a project with you guys, what kind of training and qualifications do you think these candidates should have? And you can talk just for the research and development since you're more fluent in that.
Well, so let me give my own opinion here, but first reflecting a little bit back on something that you had mentioned earlier about your own interest that I was really positively surprised by. So maybe this is 3 or 4 years ago. I was invited by well, at that point it was Dean Garrett, now of course provost, to serve on the CMU presidential review of the College of Engineering. And as part of that, we had the opportunity to talk to students and faculty and staff about how they view things were going. And what was really remarkable, and again, it goes to show how intelligent and always ahead of the curve that CMU students are. It wasn't something that really permeated our thought back when I was a student. Without fail, almost every CMU student said, I want to know what's happening with my work, right? It's important to me that, you know, that it is being used in line with my expectations, with my ethics, that I'm not just sort of like, you know, hands or brains for hire kind of thing. And I think that was very prescient now, if we certainly as we see like the unintended consequences of technology. Of course, those have always been around, but now with the scale and the time constant associated with it. So I would encourage CMU students to continue to push at the limits of that, right? To hold, you know, now we see in overall the flattening of organizations, right? You know, the value of experts, whatever your profession is, and to really drive organizations, whatever organization they tend to join, whether that's a nonprofit or a corporate or whatever. And I think that was something that I didn't really recognize, that really stuck out to me, and I really want to and I don't, how they go around solve that, whether that's just sort of from the culture, from students coming in, promoted by the university. You can't really say, but that was something that I hope that you and your fellow students hold fast to that, and even do more with that. I think what also, on a little bit more technical fashion, you know, I think I mentioned again, one of the smartest guys I know, PhD in statistics. But you know, I think I don't have to tell you this, right? No matter what happens, no matter what degree I think you're in at CMU, somehow you're going to be exposed, touched, contributed to, develop something in the larger aspects of these, say, I'm going to use the broad digital technologies, but specifically around things like artificial intelligence, which again I know is a very broad, perhaps an overly broad term. But at the very least, not all of us will be, you know, AI algorithm developers, but being familiar with the tools and the sort of the state of the art and what is legitimate and what is BS, that I think is a really powerful skill set. That I think that just because we're constantly swimming in it every day, you know, in our I mean, of course, you would CMU directly, but me a little bit in my role, is I think that just being able to cut through to say, no, this is crap, this is not a thing, this is BS. Say, you know what, maybe something is here. Let's use this. Let's develop this. Let's invest in it. How will it change? I mean, again, this is not a super shocking thing to say, but all of almost no matter what field we work in, over the next 10 years, our profession, our working environment will be somehow impacted more or less through all of the advancements that we see in our artificial intelligence. And I think that 10 years is not a crazy time horizon. I mean, imagine if the pandemic had happened 10 years ago. We wouldn't have necessarily had the opportunity to even have this quality of a conversation, through this device, something like this. So we really get to see how things that are just nascent within a decade, can turn things on the dime. And I think that CMU in particular, and again, I think that this is what's fantastic is just, again, maybe to reflect back a little bit. One of the reasons I went to CMU is well, of course, the Carnegie and the Mellon, but it was the U, right? It was the university part of it, right? Some of my friends, just remark. I mean, it just seemed natural at the time, at CFA, right? And at that point it was at the Dietrich College, for example, right? Sorry, it was called Humanities and Social Sciences back in my day. And so it was, those kind of things where I think that hopefully there is that crosstalk, right? I know that initiatives such as CMU AI are intended to break that down, and I think that that's something where it's just natural. I know that it's not walking across campus at the moment, but hopefully soon, whether it's the physical or the virtual, whatever. I hope that my friends and say colleagues at School of Computer Science and the College of Engineering also welcome in different parts of the university. I know they do, of course, in order to sort of reap the benefits of the magical intersection of all the stuff that happens at the university.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I mentioned this, but I'm a minor in human computer interaction, and we definitely talk a lot about ethics with technology and AI. So I definitely think it's a rising field, and a lot of different departments at CMU definitely cover it, which is great to hear. So our final question for recruitment: how do you think CMU students can help themselves stand out during the recruitment process?
So I'll just speak for us, but I guess this is probably a pretty typical thing. And again, I don't know the curriculum at CMU nearly as well as I did before, but always a strength at CMU was you guys are builders, right? Like, one of my favorite things, which started well after my time there, but I think also supported by one of my fellow graduate students at the time, is he's a teaching faculty at CMU, Bill Nace, is a program it's called Build 18. And it's I guess it's called, 18 because of 18XXX because of electrical and computer engineering, ECE department, but it's an opportunity to just go out and make crazy stuff, right? So last time I was there, I just got untold videos and pictures in the gym there of people making like flying Harry Potter simulator, VR simulator rooms, and obviously in an automatic drink mixer, all this, just crazy stuff, right? And so why do I bring this up is I think CMU is such a great place that marries the theory and the practical. Mm-hmm. And you say, how do you stand out? Is to tell the stories of that, right? Is you get to say, well, no, this is what I read, or I got an A in a course, right? The reality is there's tons of really smart people that understand the theory, but I think when you put the rubber on the road, and you can open up a notebook and show some code or show how I've contributed to something. I think that to how you worked as part of a team, that's a really critical skill. That's something we ask somebody all the time is, hey, tell us something, how you worked as part of the team. It was great, and tell us something when it failed, when it bombed, when there was a conflict. Because I think especially when you're pursuing very challenging goals, it's not always going to go great. And sometimes sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's interpersonal. And that's okay, right? I think going in that, nobody's going to be a single a person out on an island. Nobody wants to be a single person out on their entire career. So those things where you can talk about the practical application of what you've done and how you work and also what I mentioned before. I know it's sort of almost an amazing, all too good to be your wish list, but an interdisciplinary team. Tackling some of these challenging projects, those are all the strengths of CMU, in my opinion. And so I hope that's more of an encouraging. I know it's CMU students always rise to the occasion, but it's not easy to do those things. But I think you've got all the tools and resources there that you need there to make that kind of stuff happen.
Thank you so much for sharing. Definitely not sure how Build 18 is going to work this year if it does happen in the spring, but I guess we'll see. And I know,
and even that's a great, the way Build 18 works, right? Other students at other schools, they go home and who doesn't, I mean, who's more sleep deprived than CMU students who go home and who knows what to do over winter break, right? And CMU students like, no, I'm going to come back early. I'm going to build this random thing, right? Whatever that is. And do it out on my own. And I know the cycle is of course longer than that. But it just goes to show that the creativity, the drive, that is the heart of CMU it sets it, those kind of things. It absolutely sets CMU students apart.
Definitely. Okay, so we're kind of running a little bit over time, and I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. So we'll stop it with one final question. What career advice would you give to your younger self?
What I think my least favorite question, and I don't know if this is a cliche if people ask this anymore, right? Where they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 10 years? When's the last time that any of us got something like that right? Right? Like it just, what is it like? Predictions. Some random scientist guy, right? Predictions are hard, especially about the future.
Mm.
And for better or for worse, I'm not trying to give myself credit in this way. I just never really thought like that. To be like, oh, I want to be X in 5 years. And for a lot of people, that framework is important, right? You need to set goals and achieve goals, right? I think that's an important part of sort of what makes us human, right? We want to make ourselves better, improve the world around us. But I think it's to be a little bit more comfortable in the decisions that you make in the moment that you are, right? Don't play 7-dimensional chess when checkers will do, right? Let's move across the board. Let's tackle the problem that's in front of us. Do great now. I think that was something that I think, at least in my career. Now, again, that's worked for something where I have a large supportive organization where it wasn't like, I think that's very easy advice maybe to say to an entrepreneur who's taken the courage to like go out and fund her own company, for example, right? Like I could just be like, oh, you should just whatever kind of thing when she's trying to like get to the next investor deadline or something like this. But to have the confidence, I think that this is something that even more so than when I was a younger student. CMU was of course a top tier university then. I think it's even more recognized for its excellence now. And I think that I would just encourage the graduates to have confidence in themselves, right? If you can run the CMU gamut successfully, that's not too bad. You've got some skills, you've got some talent, you've got some drive. Is to just make sure that you do. And I'm not one of these people that says, oh, just do what you love or whatever, because a lot of times, if that was it, I would be off playing ice hockey, and that I'm not good enough. That's not putting food on the table, right? It's not like that, but do try to have confidence. Say, listen, I made that decision, I made this choice. Solve the problem that's in front of you. Be excellent in that role. And if you've kind of got the big picture right, you're working for the right organization, you're in the right place. I think a lot of that will come. I've been very lucky to have benefited from that. Pittsburgh wasn't that cool of a place back in the day, but I had a natural love and it certainly embraced me. Bosch may be more of a thing than a digital company, recognized the skills that CMU imbued me with at that time. I think if you sort of, if those things align for you say yourself and your fellow students there, and you're in that right place, just to have the confidence and not constantly worry like, where am I in my 10-year plan? You're going to have this. You're going to have the skills and the talents to adapt. I firmly believe that as a CMU graduate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like a lot of CMU students definitely obsess over their 5-year plan or where they're going to be full time. So I hope CMU students like me would take advice like that to heart when they're thinking about full-time jobs.
Indeed.
Okay, and is there anything else that you wanted to share that might help CMU students?
I think we talked about a lot. I think it is just that last part of it too is certainly there's been a lot of examples, I think, where students, which of course are the real drivers of the university, together with the amazing faculty and staff that you have, the people at the university, is we don't necessarily take the time, and we don't really know at the time uh, how prescient or how yeah, maybe that's the right word, prescient. The university is, what a bellwether the university is for where the world is going, and just to have an opportunity to kind of somehow to reflect that, and this is, I don't even know what that necessarily means, but maybe at the very least just to enjoy it. It was the final. Again, this is exactly what old guy stories do, but I don't even know if is there still a Mobot competition? Does Mobot still exist? It
Yeah.
does exist, right? And like, in my undergraduate, like the Mobot couldn't finish, right? Like it wasn't smart enough to like get there, right? And it was like, oh my God, somebody finished the damn Mobot course. Like that was a big thing, right? And that was from my time when I started until I ended. So just things go so fast, right? In there, and it went so fast, like you don't even really notice it. And I didn't even really no, it didn't. It just to take the time to enjoy those kind of things and appreciate that in our little, relatively speaking, university, that we're at the center of so many amazing things. And the final thing, really final thing I'll say is, I mean, not that the graduate student population is not also special, but it is so hard to get into CMU. Like I always tell Jim, I'm like, thank God you guys let me in back in the day, because if I had to apply to get into CMU again, like, and just a little bit of, and I'm not just trying to preach like, I think like sort of self health or healing in this time, but a little bit of appreciation. Like the university is pretty good at recognizing great potential and great talent in that moment. Again, reflecting back a little bit, don't think too far ahead. Don't forget to appreciate yourself. Like you're among amazing people. Continue to in that moment lean on the university, lean on your students, because the university doesn't let in dummies, and it's a great place that if you are able to say ride the wave rather than get buried in it, you're going to come out in a great place on the other side of things. And remember, the university picks you and your fellow students because they know that you have the ability to do just that.
Thank you for that response, and thank you so much for being here today.